Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden. On Tuesday we had an off-the-cuff, very passionate appeal from a woman who was calling in from here in my new home state of Tennessee. And tonight we have something a lot more polished that we're taking on, and I have some notes for us, and it's going to be fun. So welcome to everybody old and new, and we're going to do some feminism from a materialist perspective here tonight. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. Like the video if you enjoy my content. And let's go see what we got. Okay, y'all ready to watch them spin this right round? Let's do it.
Have signed legislation targeting LGBTQ people into law.
Two controversial bills are now law in Alabama. A bill regulating what school bathroom Oklahoma students use. A House committee passed a bill focused on pronouns.
And hundreds more of these bills have been introduced in state legislatures. More every year for the last 3 years. The laws are increasingly focused on what sports teams transgender school children can play on, which bathroom they can use, and about the use of pronouns.
So, for the 100th time, protecting girls' sports and private spaces is not anti-trans, it's pro-girls.
But these bills are at the state level. If you look to the federal government, you'd hear a different message to transgender students.
We're here to say that's wrong, and it's against the law.
That's because the current federal government believes gender identity discrimination violates a 1972 federal civil rights law.
You know what else was going on in the 1970s? The second wave of feminism. Title IX. This is our stuff. They're just reinterpreting it away from us. Isn't that fun? Language.
So when it comes to the rights of trans students, conservative states and the federal government are at odds. But the enforcers of education policy are a third level of government, local school boards, and they are caught in between.
All right. So, arguably. But they mentioned conservative states. By their own map that they show in this video, more than half the states, well over half, like 30 plus states, have passed some kind of law in contradiction to this.
With extraordinarily high stakes.
I was thinking, wow, there's no way I'm ever going to vote yes for this.
Gender affirmation is suicide prevention.
No, mental health treatment is suicide prevention. I have never seen any evidence that this shit actually gets better with the affirmative treatment.
This coming year will be my 7th year teaching in Tennessee. I'm seeing a lot more depression, a lot more anxiety.
Yeah, no shit. Everybody's a lot more depressed and anxious these days. That doesn't prove anything. And you don't suppose this person has any kind of bias that they might be looking through, do you?
Seeing a lot of suicidal ideation, which the data bears out.
One estimate says that 20% of trans and non-binary youth will attempt suicide. That's 2 times the rate of their cisgendered peers.
Okay, and again, I'm going to call bullshit on that one. And I actually have some numbers to back that up here. Let's see. On, what is this? Teen and Adolescent, the Adolescent Wellness Academy. Teen and Adolescent Mental Health Facts and Statistics. This is aimed at the demo, okay? Cases of major depression among teens ages 16 and 17 rose by an overwhelming 69% between 2009 and 2017. So that doesn't even take the pandemic into account. And it certainly doesn't take any of this nonsense into account. Feelings of anxiety and helplessness increased 71%. 1 out of 5 girls ages 12 to 17 had experienced major depression. Between 2008 and 2017, the suicide rate among teens ages 18 to 19 increased by 56%. Like, it's just bad. It's bad across the board, especially for young people. This person is being I don't think disingenuous. I think he actually believes what he's saying, but he's really not helping anybody by obscuring the real problem here, which is the same thing that causes trans identity, which is just another symptom of mental illness.
And other surveys on mental health in trans youth find that they are more than twice as likely as cisgender children to experience bullying or to not attend school because they didn't feel safe.
Yeah, and I bet there's similar numbers for like neurodivergent children. I neglected to look that up. I'm sorry. I didn't actually think of that until just this very minute, because I just think that all of this could be explained by these children struggling with mental health issues, just generally.
I do have a transgender son
She has a daughter.
that is 17 years old. I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Which is actually not super far from here. I feel like it isn't directly right smack in the middle of the state. But here in a minute we'll see that like Nashville is exactly in the same place, which it's not. It's not.
Almost nowhere have more anti-LGBTQ bills been introduced.
There it is. There it is. There's their map. Let's look at that. Anything that's remotely pink has passed something, right? What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get my point. Anybody can get a better count of that, please be my guest. But it's not even just the central countries, states either, is it? It's not the coastals versus the flyovers. No, it's all over. Nobody actually wants this crap.
Introduced this year than in Tennessee, and at least 2 anti-trans laws related to participation in school sports and bathrooms have already gone into effect. Tennessee's bathroom law allows students, parents, or teachers to sue schools if they allow a transgender student in the bathroom of their gender identity when others are in there.
Yeah, because that makes those other children possibly unsafe, which is like the whole thing. The school is supposed to ensure the children's safety first before anything else. I remember that much from when I was in school and when I was subbing, and hell, my kids are still in school. I deal with the school board around here all the time. Blah. Brain melting fun that is. And that's their main priority. Their number one priority above all else is to keep your children safe so that you get them back at the end of the day.
Our school, the rule is trans kids either have to use the restroom designated for their sex assigned at birth,
just like everyone else,
or they need to go find a single stall gender neutral restroom. And our campuses were not built that way.
Because this is a brand new issue that's been created out of thin air. I mean, it feels like it's very distracting. You know, it's so much more shiny than, say, what we were talking about the other day. You know, all the women in this country that are dying now because their doctors are refusing to help them.
From one end of the school to the other, upstairs on this end to downstairs on that. The one time that Toby decided to just go ahead and go into the male facilities, they started chanting. They started beating on the stall door.
You're asking.
So the girl went into the boys' room, and the boys were doing everything they could to make her feel unwelcome and flush her the hell out of there. But I didn't hear anything about them ripping the stall door open and physically attacking her, because that would have been different. And they almost certainly wouldn't have done that. I'm sure it was terrifying. Like, not to downplay that child's terror in that moment, but she didn't need to be in there.
Asking a kid to fight through dysphoria and to put themselves in harm's way.
No. I'm asking them to accept their dysphoria and chill the hell out.
In 2021, when the Tennessee laws went into effect, most school boards adopted it as policy.
Bam. I feel like if this weren't such a biased presentation, they would just stop right there.
But not all of them.
We are being asked to pass a policy that goes along with state law, yet is a violation of civil rights.
This is the Metro Nashville Public School Board, which governs the school district of
Okay, it's not exactly where Murfreesboro was, but it's really, really close. And, like, I don't know. Maybe they are. My Tennessee geography is not perfect, but, like, Nashville is not. No.
of roughly 80,000 students, discussing whether or not to adopt the state law that bans transgender athletes from participating in girls' sports.
But I thought they didn't have a choice. This whole thing is about how they don't have a choice, and then here we see them making the choice to defer the whole thing. Bureaucracy sure is confusing.
In public middle and high schools.
It is a moral and ethical dilemma for me as a board member. It was not something that anyone on our board was willing to make the motion to pass.
The focus has just been wrong. Like, how is this something that we're placing at the feet of our children? All those in favor of deferring policy 4.301, raise your hand. Okay. Unanimous.
We're in this place now where we as a district have been able to say there are adults and people in charge in your life who support you and care about you.
Yeah. They're usually called your parents. And I'm saying this as somebody whose parents are both wastes of space on a good day. But usually, most of the time, the parents love the children and want the best for them. This is not controversial. What the fuck is this woman talking about?
And so the thought that our hand may be forced to implement these anti-trans policies is very scary
Pro-girl. Pro-girl.
to me.
But that decision is in a legal gray zone, and it could have consequences. School boards, states, and the federal government all play a role in U.S. education policy. But states in particular have the most power over public schools within their borders.
Well, power's a funny thing. They're going to explain to us here in a second how most of the funding does come from the local taxes. However, it's not the whole picture. And percentage doesn't, sometimes the devil's in the details, isn't it?
That's because public education in this country is traditionally funded by property taxes, which are not federal in nature, but they're state and local based.
School boards can set their own policy, but when states pass laws related to public schools, they are obligated to adopt them.
Unless they defer them, like they just did. Obligated means it's mandatory. Mandatory. And, I don't know if the school board is elected officials or whatever, but I feel like they're maybe overriding the people who pay their salaries. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm tired. Anybody have any clarity on that? I would love it. Thank you so much. Let's go.
If they don't, they risk
Funding, all the way. That's a threat that hangs over our heads pretty consistently. And I mean, we can't function without that funding.
Typically, the vast majority of public school funding comes from state and local governments, but a small portion does come from the federal government, mostly through programs related to equity, like for students with disabilities and for students living in poverty.
Aha! Now, red states especially have, I think, more than our fair share of those. At least that's what I've read. And the funny thing about that is that they often can't pay for their school lunch, right? So they have to take advantage of what you call the school lunch program. If their family qualifies, at least around here, if your family qualifies for food stamps, then you automatically get free school lunches from the federal government. Unless you live in a district that has decided to give the federal government the middle finger. Because I was, this was back at the end of May that I saw this. In a press release dated May 5th, the USDA Food and Nutrition Service announced it would now interpret the ban on discrimination based on sex included in Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and food-related legislation and programs, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, formerly the Food Stamp Program, to include sexual orientation and gender identity. So the Food Stamp Program is going the same way as Title IX. Yeah. The interpretation means schools that receive funding through the federal school lunch program could face the loss of those funds if they prohibit biological males who claim to identify as female from using girls' bathrooms or sports programs or whatever. As a result, the agency says, quote, state and local agencies, program operators, and sponsors that receive funds from an FNS must investigate allegations of discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. Which are two things that contradict one another, isn't it? Because you can't have same-sex attraction if sex doesn't mean anything. Those organizations must, for heaven's sake. Those organizations must also update their non-discrimination policies and signage to include prohibitions against discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation, the notice states. This is from the federal government. So, these, many districts here in Tennessee and in various other states who have decided not to incorporate boys into girls' sports and what have you, risk losing their lunch program for the poor children. Let the boys in the girls' bathroom or the poor children starve. But sure, yeah. I feel so bad for them. So bad for them having to go into the restroom that's for their sex just like everyone else. Oh, cry me a river.
These kinds of resources augment what's available from state and local funds.
Even though this slice is small, any school that receives federal financial assistance is beholden to Title IX, the 1972 civil rights law that, for 50 years, has ensured that there is no discrimination on the basis of sex.
That's right. Where, if boys have a certain thing, then girls should also have their version of that thing. That's how that's worked out for decades. And it has given girls and young women the opportunity to do all kinds of stuff that 100 years ago would have been just unfathomable. And like I say, if sex doesn't mean anything, then none of this means anything. Gender identity reigns supreme. It cancels out everything else.
And for public schools, the federal agencies that enforce Title IX compliance are tied to whoever is in the White House. And the past three administrations have differed in their interpretation of Title IX. The Obama administration ruled that it protects LGBTQ students.
I maybe vaguely remember reading about this at the time and kind of going, that sounds fishy. But I'm not going to even promise that actually happened. That was many, many, many moons ago, wasn't it? Like 2010-ish or something. And golly, I certainly wasn't paying attention to this sort of thing in the same way at the time. I don't think a lot of us were. Thanks, Obama.
But the Trump administration reversed it, and the Biden administration restored it again. That's why today, in 2022, it's a violation of federal civil rights law to discriminate against LGBTQ students in public schools.
but not girls. Because gender identity trumps, forgive the term, sex, doesn't it? Because if you can just identify as whatever, because sex and gender are two separate things, except that they're not. Because if you have a different gender identity, then you get to go into the opposite sex restroom, locker room, sports team, etc. You get to alter your body to look like the opposite sex, even though it's just your gender and they're two different things, and it makes no sense. But we have to listen to these people and let them go and wherever they want and do whatever they want with whomever they want. But it's totally fine to discriminate against girls in the process, because what they're doing is they're taking away their equal rights, the girls' actual equal rights to spaces and activities and opportunities.
Which could make a school district liable to a federal investigation, while some states, who control most school funding, have passed laws contrary to that. So school districts have to figure out what to do, and so do the families of trans students.
As I said in our video on Tuesday, as just a tiny little preview, the New York Times is helping these people rationalize. A lot of them just are moving away, which is interesting. I don't think that if such a thing were to come up in my life, I would be able to just uproot and leave like that. That's some middle class shit.
I would say it puts us in limbo, because while we feel heard and appreciated by maybe local boards, the state is still saying that they're not welcome. So what do? It makes all of us want to move.
I get a little fuzzy about some of it.
You don't say.
Because the federal law says that you cannot do this. That supersedes the state law.
She's right about that. I forget exactly which, I want to say 19th century case law it is that decided that after the Civil War. During Reconstruction and all that. But yeah, if the federal law and state law contradict one another, the federal law wins every time. That's how that works. So I'm going to sit here and say that these poor transgender children whose home school system is fine with them doing whatever they want are safer than the poor children, the children living in poverty here in Tennessee and in other states, who are at a lot more risk and who are not directly involved in any of this, but risk losing their lunches and their breakfasts. A lot of them have breakfast at school too. And that's part of the same system. They're going to lose 2 meals a day.
But yet they still do it, and then they cite Governor Lee's bills as a reason to discriminate.
I guess that would be just basically daring somebody to take them to court, right?
In states like Tennessee, this legal limbo could eventually be solved by a lawsuit or federal civil rights investigation that could overturn a state law. There's already a federal lawsuit on behalf of a trans teen boy in Tennessee suing to play on the boys' golf team.
This one's a little weird to me. It's actually not that far from here at all. This one is in Knoxville. And Knoxville and Nashville are not actually the same town. Kind of like how Cleveland and Columbus are not the same town. Fun facts we're learning here tonight. Yeah, this kid wants to play on the boys' golf team at Farragut High School. I assume because they're up for some kind of championship, because they do have a girls' team. That was my first assumption, was that golf is kind of a, sort of masculine sport, right? And it took forever to even get women, even allow women in the door at all. So I thought maybe there isn't a girls' team. I don't know. There's not infinite funding for this shit, right? Or maybe there is, because there is a girls' team, and the biggest problem in this kid's life is whether or not she's going to get to play on the team that's actually up for the championship and have something exciting going on, or, just have to actually practice her swing. And I was confused about golf, because I've never played golf. I'm, as I've said before, not the most athletic person in the world. as you can probably tell from there. So I just thought to myself, golf doesn't involve running. It doesn't involve lifting anything. It doesn't involve speed. It doesn't involve really, agility. You have to be able to aim a ball with that funky club thing. Women ought to be just about as good at that, right? No, apparently men have a stronger swing and they can make it fly farther. And it's like, okay. But I guess, her thing, apparently, according to the write-up I found, is putting anyway. So they've still got her playing to her strengths, even on the boys' team. And I'm sure that works out for everybody because that probably is what she's better at. And nobody wants to putt. None of the boys want to putt. They all want to just hole in one it. They all want a birdie. I'm sure of it, right? And then everybody gets a championship, and they get to look, progressive, and everybody wins. From that respect, anyway, I guess they're worried about their 90+% of their funding that comes from the bigoted community around them. Oh, of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a pretty metropolitan city of almost 1 million people. But I digress.
And there's a federal lawsuit over Tennessee's bathroom law.
Okay, and that one was actually thrown out. That one was for 2 children, both of whom individually moved out of state. And there's a New York Times article about the older one. And they moved to Massachusetts and how much happier they are there. And it's like, well, yeah, I suppose if being obsessed with your kid's gender identity is your big thing you got going on in Massachusetts, is probably going to suit you a lot better than Tennessee. But, they just, it's so disgusting. We're running a little bit long, but humor me if you will. Thank you so much for sticking with me. This article is just so ridiculous. Let's see. Yeah, this is what I read the other day. News reports from the red states right now tend to be concerned about the legislative fallout of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. But the red states scramble to out Handmaid's Tale neighboring states isn't the only human rights crime that legislators are perpetrating against their own citizens. Oh my gosh. This is about how they just had to move. Last year, 2 families in Wilson County, Tennessee signed on as plaintiffs in a federal civil rights lawsuit challenging Tennessee legislation that prohibits transgender students from using bathrooms that align with their gender identities. Because your gender identity doesn't use the damn bathroom. You use the bathroom with your genitals. They're very relevant. But when you have the New York Times helping you rationalize your decisions, I mean, really, I can't imagine that you wouldn't feel bulletproof.
Those won't necessarily change things outside of Tennessee. The institution with the power to do that nationally and that could force harmony with federal, state, and local policy would be the Supreme Court.
Ooh, and we know they mean it too.
But if those rulings don't come out in favor of trans students, the last line of defense will continue to be those closest to them.
Teachers are going to be a big part of saving kids' lives, depending on just how willing they are to be supportive, to be affirming.
I feel like that's just true anyway. A great, loving, supportive teacher just at the right time and just the right way apparently can really save somebody's life. I wouldn't know because I never found mine. I guess we moved around too much. I don't know. But listen to this.
School's always been that one place where we can hopefully find somebody who will love us and value us for who we are.
No, again, that's supposed to be your family. And it doesn't always work out that way. Believe me, I am aware. Sometimes your family are the people who you need to see the least because they can hurt you the most. But for the most part, a kid's parents love and care about them and want the best for them. What the fuck is this groomer motherfucker talking about? project much? Yeah, you know, what the hell was your home life like growing up? Does this have anything to do with why in the hell you became a teacher and tried to become a woman?
Is there anything else you'd like to add just about, your personal experience?
I could share one thing with you. I came across this last weekend was Pride. She was very excited. This is what she sees.
All right. See, I almost skipped this part because it's the tail end of the video and we're running real long, but look at this picture. Look at the detail in the flags and the fireworks, and she was sure to write the word pride, and all the little people with the love, and look at the expression on that child's face. And just, that's not where the color is. That's not where the attention is. That's not, I don't know. And a couple of the things were clearly, like the fireworks and the hearts and stuff were clearly like she drew herself first and then drew the rest of the shit around it afterwards. And you can even tell because, like, part of it looks like it's in pencil and crayon, and then, like, she finished it with marker. And it was just a self-portrait. And then all that other shit is added on. Like, it really is just so emblematic, and I do agree that it's very expressive as a self-portrait. I think that this mother has completely missed the boat, though.
Right, there she is, and there's all these people supporting the flag, and they're giving her hearts and fireworks, and I'm so thankful that this is how she feels.
I bet you are.
I can't imagine that if she did end up going to schools or being put into a situation where she wasn't supported and celebrated, that this would not be the case.
I mean, this is clearly the world that you've created for her.
No shit. I forgot. It's late. Forgive me. This is a little boy we're talking about. It doesn't really matter. The child has clearly expressed himself. And I think the mother is wildly misinterpreting him. Did that look like a picture of a happy child to you? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too deep into it. What do you think? It's very, very late, and I thank you so much for sticking with me, you guys. She's just so proud of the world that she's built for her child. As opposed to, I don't know, teaching them how to live in the real one. I'm a big fan of preparing your kids for the real world myself. I find that it's much more practically effective. And the proof is in the pudding. When the rubber meets the road, yada yada. If you raise your kids in a curated environment, that you're not always going to be around to maintain that. It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it? What the guy was saying about how school is supposed to be the one place where you find someone who truly appreciates you. It's like, no. That's creepy as shit, isn't it? That's twice in here we've heard that sentiment where they're just, the ones giving the kids unconditional love. They're the ones who want to be the ones doing that. They want to be the ones to truly understand the children. As opposed to, I don't know, helping the parents understand the children if they have such insight. Because that's not their job. But I'm going to leave it there because we're over half an hour. Thank you so much for tuning in. And like the video if you enjoyed. This has been some pretty slick shit. And it's almost what they leave out more than what they say. With this kind of stuff, with this highly edited, very methodical, propagandist type stuff. So share this around because we need to spread the word. We need to drag feminism kicking and screaming back into the real world, whether it likes it or not. Because this is not feminism. Feminism isn't for everybody. Feminism is supposed to be about the liberation of women from the system of male values we live in, called patriarchy. So subscribe to the channel to support me in that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Please, please, please leave me a comment if you have any thoughts, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I have been Rad Mom. Bye.